When you think of vintage tractors, you probably imagine slow, rusty old machines crawling through fields. But what if I told you some of these classics were hiding absolute monster engines under the hood? We're talking insane horsepower, raw torque, and designs that made them unstoppable beasts in their time. Today we're counting down 10 vintage tractors that weren't just farm machines, they were powerhouses built to dominate the land. Number 1. John Deere Model D. When John Deere rolled out the Model D in 1923, it marked the beginning of a new era in farming machinery. This wasn't just another tractor to join the competition, it was the company's very first production tractor, and it came with an engine that farmers had never seen before. Underneath its rugged frame sat a massive 501 cubic inch two-cylinder engine, a displacement figure that sounded more like it belonged to a locomotive than a farm tractor. The real magic of the Model D's power plant wasn't just its size, but its design. John Deere embraced a slow-revving, long-stroke configuration that emphasized torque over raw horsepower. At around 27 drawbar horsepower, it may not sound like much compared to modern standards, but back in the 1920s, it was a revolution. Farmers quickly realized that the Model D's huge pistons produced a steady thumping rhythm of power that could rip through tough prairie sod where other tractors bogged down. The tractor's distinctive sound earned it the affectionate nickname, Johnny Popper. Every firing stroke sounded like a gunshot echoing across the fields, and rural communities quickly grew familiar with its pop-pop cadence. Children on farms grew up with that sound ringing in their ears. It was the mechanical heartbeat of their family's livelihood. Durability was another reason for its legendary status. The Model D was built for punishment, able to endure long hours in unforgiving conditions. It was simple to maintain, with big, easy-to-access components, and it shared many parts with later Deere machines, making it serviceable for decades. The fact that John Deere kept the Model D in production for a full 30 years until 1953 says everything about its impact. Generations of farmers trusted it, and many tractors continued working well past their official service life. Even today, when collectors fire up a Model D, the ground-shaking thump of that two-cylinder engine reminds everyone why this machine became a cornerstone in the John Deere legacy. Number 2. Case 150, 1887. Long before gasoline and diesel ruled the fields, the giants of agriculture were powered by steam. And among those iron behemoths, the Case 150 HP steam tractor stood head and shoulders above the rest. Built in 1887 by J.I. Case, it wasn't just big, it was colossal, so much so that it holds the title of the largest steam tractor ever constructed. This monster carried a 150 horsepower steam engine, which may not sound extraordinary today, but in the late 19th century, it was jaw-dropping. Most tractors of the time offered a fraction of that power. The Case 150 could haul impossibly heavy loads, drive threshing machines, and even serve industrial roles like powering sawmills. Its sheer muscle made it a versatile workhorse for any job that demanded brute force. Weighing over 20 tons with iron wheels taller than most men, the Case 150 looked like a moving fortress. Farmers who saw it in action often compared it to a locomotive crawling across the fields. It had the strength to pull 30 bottom plows through tough soil, something that smaller tractors wouldn't be able to match for decades. Unfortunately, practicality worked against it. The Case 150 was too heavy for many bridges and roads, and the transition to internal combustion engines soon left steam tractors behind. Very few were built, and eventually, most disappeared into history. Yet, its legend never faded. Enthusiasts dreamed of seeing one alive again, and in recent years, a fully functional replica of the Case 150 was painstakingly built. Watching its pistons pump and hearing the hiss of steam reminds us just how powerful and intimidating these early mechanical monsters truly were. Number 3. Minneapolis Moline UDLX. When the Minneapolis Moline UDLX hit the scene in 1938, farmers didn't quite know what to make of it. Officially named the UDLX Comfort Tractor, it was marketed as the world's first luxury farm tractor, a machine that could work in the field during the day and double as a road-going vehicle at night. But hidden under its streamlined hood was another reason it was unforgettable: a 283 cubic inch, six-cylinder gasoline engine. Most tractors of the 1930s used small, slow-revving engines built for torque, but the UDLX's six-cylinder was adapted straight from automobile design. At about 55 horsepower, it was one of the most powerful tractor engines of its era, and it gave the machine capabilities that no farmer had ever experienced before. The UDLX could actually reach road speeds of 40 miles per hour, a figure faster than many farm trucks of the day. This meant a farmer could hitch up a wagon, plow the field, and then head into town without ever leaving the seat. The tractor's futuristic cab, with a heater, windshield wiper, and even a radio option, drew plenty of attention. But it was the engine's deep growl and smooth running that set it apart. For those who heard it roar down a country road, it sounded less like a farm machine and more like a muscle car. Sadly, timing killed the UDLX. The Great Depression left most farmers struggling just to get by, and the UDLX's high price, nearly 4 times the cost of a standard tractor, made it a luxury very few could afford. Only around 125 units were ever sold, making it one of the rarest tractors today. Collectors who have restored these machines often say that hearing the big 6-cylinder fire up is like listening to farming's version of hot rod history. The UDLX may not have been a commercial success, but it proved that tractors could be more than just workhorses. They could be mechanical marvels with engines that roared with personality. Number 4. Big Bud 747, 1977. When people talk about monster engines in tractors, one name always dominates the conversation: Big Bud 747. Built in 1977 by the Northern Manufacturing Company in Montana, Big Bud wasn't just a tractor. It was, and still is, the largest farm tractor ever constructed. At its heart was a 24.1-liter Detroit diesel 16V692T, a V16 engine that originally pumped out 760 horsepower, but was later tuned to over 1,100 horsepower. To put that into perspective, most modern tractors rarely exceed 400-500 horsepower. Big Bud had more than double that, making it a true legend. This engine gave Big Bud the strength to pull implements that no other tractor could manage. On the fields of Montana, it was used for deep ripping, often pulling a 35-foot cultivator through acres of soil at a pace that seemed impossible for anything else. At 27 feet long, 20 feet wide, and 14 feet tall, with a weight of 135,000 pounds, Big Bud was as much a spectacle as it was a farm machine. Its tires alone were taller than most men, custom-made to handle its immense bulk. When it fired up, the roar of its V16 was more like a locomotive than a tractor, a sound that echoed for miles and made onlookers stop in awe. For decades, Big Bud worked in the fields before being retired to a museum, where it continues to attract fans from around the world. Unlike many one-off machines, Big Bud wasn't just built for show. It earned its keep on real farms, doing real work. That's why it holds such a special place in tractor history. Big Bud remains the undisputed king of tractor engines, a symbol of just how far engineers were willing to go in pursuit of agricultural power. Number 5. Lanz Bulldog. While American tractors were often about multiple cylinders and raw size, Germany's Lanz Bulldog proved that sometimes one was enough if it was big enough. Produced between 1921 and 1957, the Bulldog carried a hot bulb single-cylinder engine that could displace up to 10 liters. That's right, one cylinder larger than the engine of many cars today. The Bulldog's engine design was simple but brutally effective. A single piston thumped away, firing at a low RPM and delivering massive torque with each combustion stroke. The effect was almost violent. The tractor shook, rattled, and belched smoke, but it never gave up. Farmers joked that every time it fired, you could feel it in your chest. Output ranged from 12 to 55 horsepower depending on the model. But like other torque-heavy tractors of its era, the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Its low revving pull was capable of handling jobs that smaller multi-cylinder tractors would struggle with. What made the Lanz Bulldog's monster engine even more impressive was its fuel flexibility. The hot bulb design allowed it to burn almost anything: diesel, kerosene, heating oil, and even used engine oil. In tough economic times, that versatility kept farms running when fuel was scarce or expensive. The Bulldog's rugged simplicity made it incredibly popular across Europe and beyond. Over 200,000 units were built, and many are still running today in the hands of collectors. At vintage tractor shows, the unmistakable pop-pop exhaust note of a bulldog draws crowds instantly. For generations of farmers, the Lanz Bulldog wasn't just a tractor, it was a mechanical companion, tough as nails and able to survive on whatever fuel you could pour into it. Its one-cylinder monster engine gave it a personality all its own, and that's why it remains one of the most beloved vintage tractors in the world. Number 6. Rumeli Oil Pull. In the early decades of the 20th century, when tractors were still new to farms, the Rumeli Oil Pull emerged as one of the most intimidating machines a farmer could buy. Manufactured by the Advanced Rumeli Company of La Porte, Indiana, these tractors were unlike anything else on the market. Their calling card was the massive two-cylinder kerosene-burning engine that could displace over 1,000 cubic inches in its largest forms, numbers that sound absurd even today. The Oil Pull's engine was a slow-revving brute. Running at around 400 revolutions per minute, it wasn't designed for speed, but for raw pulling force. The giant pistons moved like hammers, pounding away rhythmically as the tractor crawled forward with unstoppable determination. Farmers who worked with these machines often said they didn't just hear the oil pull, they felt it in the ground beneath their boots and in the handles of their plows. One of the reasons the oil pull was so beloved was its ability to run on kerosene. At the time, kerosene was much cheaper and more readily available than gasoline, and Rumeli cleverly designed their engines to use it efficiently. This gave the tractor a major edge during hard economic times, when every cent saved on fuel mattered. The oil pull was also rugged. Its sheer size and simplicity meant that it could withstand the punishing conditions of prairie farming. In fact, many oil pulls outlasted their original owners, being passed down through generations. The sight of its tall smokestack and the sound of its deep chugging became part of the rural soundtrack across America and Canada. Today, the oil pull is remembered as a pioneer of heavy-duty farm machinery. It bridged the gap between steam traction engines and modern internal combustion tractors, proving that monster engines fueled by affordable fuel could power agriculture into a new era. Number 7. Allis-Chalmers Model G. The Allis-Chalmers Model G started life as a small, lightweight tractor introduced in 1948, designed for vegetable farmers and market gardeners. With its tiny four-cylinder Continental engine making just 10 horsepower, it was never meant to be a powerhouse. But in the hands of inventive enthusiasts decades later, the Model G became the basis for some of the wildest tractor engine swaps ever attempted. Custom builders began experimenting with fitting aircraft radial engines into these modest tractors. World War II had left behind thousands of surplus plane engines, and in the post-war years, some tinkerers saw an opportunity to blend aviation power with farm machinery. The results were nothing short of outrageous. Imagine a tractor originally built to cultivate carrots and potatoes, suddenly roaring to life with a Pratt & Whitney or Continental aircraft radial engine, belching flames and producing several hundred horsepower. These conversions could deliver power far beyond what the frame and tires were ever intended to handle. Simply starting one of these creations rattled nearby windows, and the exhaust note was more like an airfield than a farmyard. Of course, these Frankenstein tractors were not practical for everyday farming. They were built mainly for shows, demonstrations, and tractor pulls, where the sheer spectacle of a tiny Allis-Chalmers frame harnessing an airplane engine thrilled crowds. But they became legends in their own right, showing just how far enthusiasts would go to create monsters out of humble beginnings. The Allis-Chalmers Model G, with aircraft engine conversions, remains a favorite among vintage tractor fans, not for its practicality, but for its sheer audacity. It's proof that in the tractor world, there's always room for a little madness. Number 8. Fordson E27N Major. When World War II ended, Europe needed affordable, powerful machines to rebuild agriculture and industry. The Fordson E27N Major, produced between 1945 and 1952, answered that call. It was a robust and dependable tractor, fitted with a range of engines including Perkins diesels and large gasoline units, some borrowed from truck applications. But what cemented the E27N's place in the Hall of Monster Tractors were the aftermarket conversions that farmers and hobbyists performed. Some adventurous engineers decided that if a truck engine made it strong, then an aircraft engine would make it unstoppable. Enter the Rolls-Royce Merlin V12, a 27-liter supercharged engine used in legendary warplanes like the Spitfire, Hurricane, and Lancaster bomber. Fitting a Merlin into a Fordson turned it into a roaring, fire-breathing beast. With well over 1,000 horsepower on tap, these conversions were no longer farm tractors, they were monsters built for spectacle. In tractor-pulling competitions, the sight and sound of a Merlin-powered Fordson was unforgettable. The whine of the supercharger, followed by the thunder of 12 cylinders firing in unison, left crowds in awe and rivals in the dust. Though these conversions were rare and wildly impractical for actual farm work, they gave the E27N Major a legendary reputation. Even in standard form, it was one of the strongest tractors of its time in Europe, helping mechanize farming across the continent. But in its modified Merlin-powered guise, it became a symbol of mechanical excess, proof that when it comes to tractors, sometimes bigger really is better. Number 9. Hart Parr 4080. Long before tractors became common, the Hart Parr 4080 was rewriting the rules of farm machinery. Built between 1913 and 1918, this tractor was a colossus of its time, so large and powerful that it dwarfed most of its competition. At its heart was a two-cylinder 550 cubic inch engine, a displacement figure that defies belief even today, measuring over 25 liters. Despite the enormous size, the engine produced just 40 drawbar horsepower and 80 belt horsepower. But those numbers don't tell the real story. The Hart Parr 4080 ran at only 300 RPM, with pistons so massive they could be mistaken for coffee cans. Each combustion stroke delivered an avalanche of torque, allowing the tractor to pull plows through virgin prairie land that horses or smaller machines could never touch. Its sound was unforgettable. Farmers described the exhaust as a deep booming blast that echoed across the fields, a sound more akin to artillery than a farm machine. Seeing and hearing a Hart Parr 4080 at work must have been an awe-inspiring experience, especially in an era when most farms were still horse-powered. The Hart Parr company is often credited with coining the word tractor itself, and the 4080 embodied that identity perfectly. A true traction engine built for heavy-duty farm work. Collectors today consider the 4080 one of the most iconic vintage tractors ever built, not just for its engineering but for the way it redefined what a farm machine could be. Number 10. International Harvester TD40. The International Harvester TD40 was one of the earliest crawler tractors to earn a reputation as a true powerhouse. Built from 1933 to 1940, it was designed to combine the traction of a tracked vehicle with the muscle of one of the largest diesel engines of its era. Under its rugged body sat a 461 cubic inch four-cylinder diesel engine. At the time, diesels were still a relatively new technology in farming, and the TD40 helped prove their worth. What made the engine especially unique was its ability to start on gasoline and then switch over to diesel once it was running. This clever system solved one of the major problems of early diesel engines, which could be extremely difficult to start in cold conditions. With around 50 horsepower on tap, the TD40 might not sound overwhelming by today's standards, but its torque was unmatched. Combined with crawler tracks, it could pull implements through soil that would leave wheeled tractors spinning helplessly. This versatility made it popular not only on farms, but also in construction, forestry, and even military roles. Farmers and operators valued the TD40 for its toughness. It could work long days under punishing conditions without complaint, its monster diesel heart proving nearly indestructible. For many, it represented the future of heavy machinery, reliable, fuel-efficient, and strong enough to tackle jobs horses or smaller tractors could never dream of. Today, restored TD40s are treasured by collectors, not just as machines, but as symbols of a turning point in tractor history. They stand as proof that even in the 1930s, International Harvester was willing to push boundaries with a diesel-powered monster that left a lasting legacy. These vintage tractors proved one thing: raw power never goes out of style. From giant diesel beasts to experimental monsters, each of these machines left a legacy that still inspires tractor lovers today. Which one blew your mind the most? Drop your favorite in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip back into tractor history, Smash that like button, subscribe for more legendary machines, and I'll see you in the next video.